Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just give you an update on what's going on here at Kilauea volcano. In the lower east drift zone, the effusive eruption of lava continues with little significant change from the last few days. The Fissure 8 spatter cone continues to produce a pretty vigorous river of lava in an open channel that heads to the northeast and then turns southeast and enters the ocean about 8 miles downflow. One of the interesting things observed by our field crews during the overflight this morning is that the channel system in the lower portion of this lava flow, where it ends up into the ocean, has gone through some changes. And this is an interesting phenomenon of reorganization that we're trying to understand. It appears at times that the channel is very vigorous all the way to the ocean, and at other times it diminishes and just becomes a broad, rubbly front. As of this morning, the channel was mostly on the southern side of the flow, and the margin of the flow is expanding a little bit to the south. So there's some very interesting channel dynamics going on in this lava flow in the lower portion that really does impact its behavior as it spreads out and enters the ocean. We're still seeing a little bit of weak spattering at Fissure 22, which is just to the northeast or downrift of Fissure 8. This has been intermittent for some time now, and I kind of liken this to the wound is still bleeding there. In other words, even though the main activity is coming out at Fissure 8, there's still a little bit of magma that's making it to the surface at Fissure 22 and this sort of intermittent strombolian bursts. And one thought we have, but have not yet been able to test, is that maybe the lower end of the fissure system is still interacting a little bit with groundwater, causing this intermittent explosivity. But that's just an idea we haven't really tested. So things are continuing in the lower east drift zone. There's still the same hazards from the lava flows and potential spillouts of the channel. Still very high amounts of sulfur dioxide gas being measured and coming out of Fissure 8 and drifting downwind. And of course, the ocean entry is still producing the very voluminous blaze plume that is also a hazardous phenomenon. And I hope we're going to hear from John Bravender a little bit about the weather that this volcanic eruption is creating, which is really a remarkable aspect of the phenomenon. Up at the summit of Kilauea volcano, we continue to have these almost daily collapse explosion events, we're calling them. We had one this morning at 9:20 in the middle of our HVO staff meeting. It looked a lot like the ones we've been having now for a number of weeks. Just before the event, we had earthquake rates up there between 25 and 40 per hour, and then as is typical after this event, we dropped to about 10 per hour. So it's a period of seismic quiet occurring now. And we think we're just moving right into the next cycle, which appears to show no sign of stopping. SO2 emissions from the volcano summit have dropped to very low levels, pretty much background levels prior to the 2008 activity, really, up at the summit. So gas is not much of a hazard from the summit activity at this time, although the very voluminous lower east drift zone SO2 plume does occasionally impact the summit of the volcano and cause very poor air quality. And I think I'll conclude at that.
Good morning. Quickly, we'll touch base about winds first, then get to the interesting weather after that. Trade winds drop a notch today, but it's only briefly, and we're not expecting much change in the wind flow, just not quite as strong as they have been, still spreading emissions and et cetera to the southwest, and then, of course, wrapping around and affecting the Kona side. High pressure north of the state, subtropical ridge strengthens and rebuilds to our northeast, bringing winds up a notch tomorrow and then continuing through the week. We might actually see another increase in wind speeds come this weekend as well, keeping trades on the breezy side. We are unstable over the islands with a upper low off to the northwest of the state, and with a surge of moisture that had come in over the weekend. We had localized convection, localized heavy rain, essentially being forced by the heat from the eruption. This is similar to, but not quite as intense as the thunderstorms that we had last week about this time, but it's the same phenomenon essentially. This is more localized to the kind of the lower east drift zone area, but even with that, at a community rain gauge report from Leilani Estates of over 9 inches of rain in the past 24 hours. So reported 9 inches, reported 6 inches, and even a retired Weather Service employee living in Pahoa, over 5.5 inches in the past just this morning. So this is producing some pretty significant rainfall over a very localized area. Luckily, the ground is very porous there and is not causing any problems for those areas that are still accessible. That's it. I'll be available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Today's Monday, July 9th. Status quo up at the summit of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. We are in day 60 of our closure. Over the weekend, Friday the 6th, we had a fairly large sinkhole open up on Highway 11, which I'll remind everybody that is the jurisdiction of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. It's the roadway here on the island. A sinkhole opened up right near the P.E. Mona, or the Volcano Golf Course intersection on the shoulder. But the Hawaii Department of Transportation was able to get it repaired fairly quickly. We were down to one lane of traffic, but we did not have to close the highway. So that is repaired today. I drove over it myself this morning, and it is definitely a noticeable big bump and dip, but the steel plates are in place. Just a reminder for everybody to drive very slowly and carefully on 11. A reminder that there is no stopping except for emergency stopping on the shoulders, and that we continue to see cracking and fracturing in park roadways. And as Tina mentioned, at 9:20 this morning, the collapse explosion event that occurred definitely felt by us who were up at the summit at the Visitor Emergency Ops Center as we broke out of an operations meeting. So that always makes things an interesting morning for sure. And that's all I have today.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. We will now take questions. So reporters, please state your name and your affiliation once your line opens. And we also ask that you just ask one question and then let it cycle through the reporters and then come back for a second one later.
Our first question will be coming from Kate Brooks with the Ka'u Calendar. Your line is open.
Thank you so much for taking my question. We noticed that there is lava encroaching towards the Ahalunui warm ponds in Puna and the Kua'okala Public Charter School. And I was wondering if you could give us an update on how close that lava is now and what you expect from that lava in the next, if you can, the near future.
Hi. I'm afraid I can't give you the exact distance to the warm ponds or the school at this time. I apologize. But overnight, the southern margin did move forward a couple hundred yards. So it's moving very slowly. But obviously, that is a concern. And I know the county civil defense folks have asked us to keep careful track of that during our overflights, both the warm ponds area and the school. We actually have a seismic and GPS and infrasound installation at the school that we're also a little concerned about. So we're watching it carefully as well, and if it looks like it's past the point of being safe, we're going to mount an expedition to retrieve our equipment. So I apologize, I don't have those numbers exactly. We could find them for you if you need them.
That would be great. Will you be including that in your update for the time being?
Well, if we did, it would probably not go out until tomorrow morning. So okay. We have a way to get back to this person to give.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Paul Lawson. I'm happy to follow up with you after the call.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Our next question will be coming from Caleb Jones with Associated Press. Your line is open.
Hi, everyone. So, Tina, you were saying that the Fisher is still emitting a high volume of SO2. A two-tiered question. Do you know what the current emission rates are there as far as the levels go of SO2? And also, given the very wet conditions the region has been having, is there any concern about the SO2 combining with water and creating any other hazards?
Yeah, good questions. Certainly when the sulfur dioxide plume interacts with the water in the atmosphere and comes out as rain, that rain is acidic. And we've seen the effects of that downwind of the Halemaumau lava lake for many years when it existed. So that likely is occurring. although we're not out there collecting rainwater systematically. But I definitely would think in the downwind area from Fisher 8, there's some acidic rain occurring. The other question was about emission rate values, and we've had actually a long discussion about this morning at our staff meeting. The methods of calculating numbers of emission rates for sulfur dioxide are complicated, and they're challenging in the current conditions where we have such high amounts coming out. These amounts tend to saturate our instruments, and we have to use some different techniques. In addition, we have trouble getting very accurate wind speeds in the area that we're measuring, and the wind speed is a critical parameter in the arithmetic that goes on to come out with a flux, an emission rate. So we've seen numbers in the last few weeks, certainly upwards of 20 to 30,000 tons per day in that range. I think right now we can confidently say we're seeing several tens of thousands of tons of sulfur dioxide per day, but we're still haggling over the exact number. I think two important points. One is the values are very high. We're certainly seeing more SO2 coming out of this eruption than we saw coming out of the lava lake at the summit of Kilauea in the last some years. And it seems like there's a trend of increasing values over the last, say, month. So those two things we know to be true, but I don't want people to get too caught up in the exact numbers because we're still working on how to best include what the numbers are, if you follow my meaning there. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Our next question comes from Dan Mikasa with Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Your line is open.
Thanks. John, could you clarify your report over you were talking about the last 24 hours and over 9 inches of rainfall. What period was that? And you also mentioned some other rainfall data. I wanted to see if that was in the same period and just get a little more detail on that phenomenon, please.
Sure. The two 24-hour rainfall reports we had were from the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, called COCORAS. 9.22 inches was, I think, ending at 8 a.m. Hawaii local time, and then the 6-inch report, I think, was ending at 7 a.m. local time. And the phone call we got from the retired forecaster living out there, 5.66 inches, that was a 7-hour total, ending at, I think it was about 9 a.m. or so.
Ending at 8 a.m. this morning? And then could you describe again what's causing that large amount of rainfall and what the forecast is for the next couple of days?
Oh, sure. The heat coming out of the lava is making the air mass really unstable. So if you picture a hot air balloon rising and floating, as long as the air in the balloon is warmer than the air around it, it'll keep rising. And that's what's happening with this air. As it has these moist and stable conditions, it hits the heat from the lava, heats up, and rises. And as it rises, it cools, condenses, and forms the rain that we're seeing. And it's just localized to the specific area where it's most unstable. And we don't really know any good thresholds or mechanisms behind it, why sometimes it develops and sometimes it doesn't. We do know that the atmosphere is stabilizing. We're developing a trade wind inversion that'll help put a cap on how deep these showers can get, and also drier, low-level air coming in, so there won't be as much moisture feeding into this. This is why we're not seeing this all the time, but is cropping up part of the time. So we think after today, maybe tonight, the rain focused along the lower eastern zone will dissipate, but then kind of transition back to a more typical trade wind weather pattern.
Okay, our question will come from Anthony Ferreira with Hawaii News Now. Your line is open.
Hi, just to go back to John, that 9 inches of rain, was that in the last 24 hours? If it ended at 9 a.m., is that 12 hours? Do you know the time period?
Yeah, that was the 9-inch rainfall report was 24 hours. That one was ending at 8 a.m. this morning. 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.